Good afternoon. Dr. Scotty gave the excellent background on overview of CINV and the benefits of effective prevention strategy in terms of patients' quality of life. What I'm going to do is talk to you about the clinical experience that led to the approval of NK-1 RAs. Here are my disclosures. So to date, there are 3 agents, and one, the IV formulation fosaprepitant of the aprepitant, have been approved for the clinical use. Aprepitant and the IV formulation fosaprepitant, which is a prodrug for aprepitant, are the first generation of NK-1 receptor antagonists, whereas the newer next generation of NK-1 RAs are netipitant and palonosetron combination, which is called Napa. And then we have most recent entry of a new drug, Rolla Pete, with a very interesting and favorable pharmacokinetic profile. With the exception of Rolla Pete, all the other agents do have interaction through CYP3A4, and I will get back to you in my subsequent slides. All of these agents are approved by the regulatory agencies, both in the United States and Europe, based on the proven efficacy in randomized double-blind clinical trials. Furthermore, inability of the 5-HT3 RAs in preventing and controlling the delayed phase of CINV makes it important that we integrate the use of NK-1 RAs to abrogate the delayed phase of CINV. We saw this slide earlier presented by Dr. Scotty, and he nicely outlined that the phase of CINV is important to know, and the key contributor for the acute phase is serotonin, whereas for the delayed phase, it's substance P. And accordingly, we have the agents targeting those neurotransmitters. Now, delayed phase of nausea, vomiting could last for 5 to 7 days or even longer for the multi-day chemotherapy. And for that reason, it's very important to understand these approved agents with NK-RA1 activity. Even though all of them have shown efficacy, there are distinct differences in pharmacokinetic profile, make them interesting in terms of what agents to apply. For instance, the first generation, aprepitant and fosaprepitant, have a short half-life, and therefore aprepitant is given daily for 3 days. Fosaprepitant is given in bigger dose IV for 1 dose based on the receptor occupancy data. The next generation molecules, Napa, has a 40-hour half-life, and Rolla Pete even longer, 120 hours of half-life, providing the potential coverage for the entire duration of delayed phase of CINV. Let's look at the clinical experience with these agents that led to their approval by the regulatory agencies. It's important to note that all of these agents utilize similar trial design, randomized clinical trials, comparing the active treatment with the triple therapy involving NK-1 RA, comparing it to the dual therapy standard of 5-HT3 RA along with a corticosteroid. Now, when you look at the clinical experience with aprepitant, you can see that it was effective in controlling the CINV both in HEC1, HEC2, as well as AC trial. While the improvement is seen in all 3 trials, it appears that the HEC1 and HEC2 had more robust results compared to the AC regimen. What about the safety profile? In general, aprepitant is very well tolerated. In some studies, you have seen asthenia, fatigue, hiccups, and headache somewhat higher than the control group, but in general, it's very well tolerated. Fosaprepitant, the IV formulation, which is a prodrug of aprepitant, was also approved in 2008 based on the non-inferiority shown against aprepitant. Moving then on to the next drug, Napa, which is a fixed drug combination of netipitant, a next generation of NK-1RA with a longer half-life, along with palinocetrone, 5-HT3RA, a combination of the fixed dose of the two drugs, given orally once before chemotherapy. And again, you can see here you have acute phase, you have delayed phase, and you have overall phase, and you see the significant improvement over control with delta that's shown here. And then you can see here the other endpoints included showing the significant difference. Again, safety profile for Napa, as shown here, is generally well tolerated. You do see headache, asthenia, and fatigue somewhat higher compared to the palinocetrone alone used as a control arm. Then moving on to Rolla Pete, the newest of the NK-1 receptor antagonist. And what you see here is the pooled data of the analysis from HEC1 and HEC2 trial. And what you see is significant difference in acute, delayed, and overall phases of CINV compared to the control group using dual therapy. What's interesting about the biology and the effects of Rolla Pete is that after 72 hours, you see plateau in the graph. That means response in CR is maintained in those patients that achieve CR, whereas the control group continue to have decline in the number of the patients with the CR as time goes by up to 5 days. Shown here is the data with the Carboplatin. Now, Rolla Pete was studied with the MEC regimen, including Carboplatin AC regimen, because AC regimen was classified as a MEC before, now it's classified as HEC, and the other moderately emetogenic regimen. And shown here is the data with Carboplatin. And what's interesting is that you clearly see the significant difference in acute and overall. But similar to the HEC data, you see the plateauing and no further decline in the CR rate after 72 hours. So this sustained effect seen with Rolla Pete most likely can be explained by the biology in terms of its favorable PK and PD profile. Rolla Pete has a selective high affinity for NK-1 receptors. And after 5 days, you still see over 90% receptor occupancy for NK-1. Furthermore, it has a half-life of 180 hours, 120 hours equivalent to 7 days. So this shows that the drug has potential to provide coverage over the entire delayed phase. The other interesting aspect of this studies is that you can see the response rate sustained through multiple cycles of chemotherapy based on this pooled phase 2-3 clinical studies all the way up to cycle 6, which can provide a favorable point in terms of patient compliance because of the control of the CINV. What about the safety profile? It has an excellent safety profile with the safety profile very similar to the control group. You can see here with regards to fatigue and constipation. Furthermore, Rolla Pete does not have interaction with CYP3A4 enzyme. It did not induce or inhibit CYP3A4 in clinical trial in healthy volunteers, and therefore you don't have to be concerned in terms of modifying the doses of other agents such as dexamethasone. It does have moderate inhibitory effect on CYP2D6, and therefore one has to use caution when you're using the CYP2D6 substrates in clinical trial. I must add here that looking at the analysis of the data, pooled analysis of data with clinical trials, phase 2, phase 3, they looked at patients who received CYP2D6 substrate and BCRP substrate versus those who didn't. There was no difference in the adverse event profile. So it appears to be safe in terms of using this drug, but one needs to just monitor for adverse event when you're using chronically the substrates for this moiety. Now, we all know that CINV can have profound effect on patients' quality of life, including cognitive function, their ability to carry out physical function, etc. And FLE scale is a validated score, and this has been studied extensively with rolapitant. And you can see here with the data that you have significantly higher FLE score in patients receiving rolapitant compared to control. So rolapitant given as a 180 milligram single oral dose can have no negative effect, or rather maintain the quality of life of the patients and maintain positive experience. So in summary, rolapitant and other NK-1RA have added new strength to the management of CINV. NK-1RAs have improved the management of CINV, particularly the delayed phase of nausea, vomiting. Furthermore, the improvement in the CINV management is associated with overall improvement in patient experience and patient's quality of life. The newer generation of NK-1RA with a favorable PK and PD profile allow single oral dose given prior to chemotherapy. And this may improve patient compliance in terms of receiving their anti-cancer therapy. Finally, rolapitant has limited drug-drug interactions, particularly those involving CYP3A4. And this may allow reducing concern on the mind of the physicians in terms of long-term use. So with that, I would end my presentation and be happy to answer any questions or